Hello, and welcome to Creative SLC, the podcast. This is a place for conversations with fellow creatives about all things creativity and navigating this rapidly changing world from a place of authenticity. Today I had the pleasure of speaking with Jason Moss, a business coach for soul-led entrepreneurs. We cover such topics as the intersection of business and spirituality, the impact of subconscious beliefs, letting go of social programming, and operating from a state of inner alignment. Now, this was my very first attempt at recording a podcast, so needless to say, there's lots of room for improvement. But I wanted to just start and get going instead of letting my perfectionist side keep me from doing so. I will do my best to get better with each episode and improve the production value of the show. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoy this very first episode of Creative SLC. All right, Jason. Well, thanks so much for coming on and speaking with me. If you don't mind, just give the listeners, viewers, a little bit of an introduction about who you are and what you're all about.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me, man. This has been so cool because we just connected on Instagram like a week ago and you sent me a really nice, thoughtful message and which felt energetically there was a lot of congruence between what we're up to. And I'm excited to have this conversation with you. Yeah, so I'm a business mentor. I help people grow and scale businesses, and really the work that I do is in the intersection between business and spirituality. And I see business as a beautiful spiritual path. And so what I'm really excited about with people is how can we use the journey of business to help people wake up? How can we use the path of entrepreneurship to become more fully who we are, to become more self-expressed, more free, more creative, more fulfilled, more connected, both to ourselves and to each other. And so my own journey through entrepreneurship has really been that. It's been how do we, build a business from the inside out. So I'm really passionate about that work, getting to help entrepreneurs not only just grow and scale and make more money and sign more clients and all those things that I think we all really want, which are awesome and really cool, but also how do we merge that with this inner journey of alignment and purpose and spirituality and freedom and bringing those two things together is what gets me up in the morning and what I just love getting to support entrepreneurs in doing.
Yeah, that language really spoke to me, and I have to tell you how I discovered you originally. It was, late night scrolling on Instagram as we do. And for whatever reason, it was one of your videos and it just caught my attention. I ended up watching the whole thing, which is rare. And I think it was, a little bit longer, maybe a couple of minutes, but still, I connected to it so much that my first thought was, oh, this must be some AI generated avatar who is speaking directly to my soul because the phone knows who I am. So it has learned the ways in which I operate and created this perfect avatar to speak to me directly. So I went to your page and I just had to make sure, okay, let's make sure this is a real person and not some, like I said, an AI generated avatar. And I was so happy that you were in fact real. And I continued to watch more of your videos and it just hit me at my core because you did such a great job of verbalizing how I was feeling about marketing. As a creative, I think it's such a struggle for so many of us, the marketing business element. I think the creative part comes naturally to most of us, but nobody really teaches you, or at least when I was going to school, nobody was really teaching you about the real world applications of running a business as a creative. And most of the advice I've seen and heard kind of falls under that corporate way of thinking of, you have to figure out who your client is, your demographic, what their problems are. You have to identify the problem. And as you were saying, it's almost like you're trying to mold yourself to hopefully appeal to the client you're speaking to. And your message to me was all about, no, it's about connecting to your passion and your spirituality and letting that come through. And that is how you connect with the type of client that your dream client, the type of client who respects and appreciates what you do. And it's more of a soul connection first and foremost, and then the work part of it kind of falls into place. Am I describing that fairly accurately?
Yeah, you got it, man. I love it. I mean, I think that the truth is there's different truths at different levels of consciousness. And I mean, I grew up, I was a singer-songwriter. I was my first real, I wouldn't even call it a business. It was really like my first time I ever built a following online was on MySpace. And I was like a 13-year-old kid and I was writing these songs about my parents' divorce and heartbreak and all the things I was going through. And I wanted to share these things. So I built this platform online and I was just sharing my heart. Like I didn't know anything about marketing at that point. And when I got older and I really immersed myself in the world of business and I started just studying the art and the craft of marketing, I learned the formulas and the strategies and bit by bit, it was like I started shifting away from that very authentic, heart-led way of expressing myself into much more of this intellectual, mental way of showing up. And I was taught, like you said, most people are, it's like, hey, you got to figure out who your niche is. You got to go figure out what their pain points are and create a bunch of content that's designed to speak to them. And that worked for me on some level. I mean, I built a very successful business. I signed over 2,000 clients. And it also felt very constricting. And what I felt for me was that marketing was this thing that I had to perform. And I had to show up and I had to think, okay, who are the people I'm trying to reach? And let me create the content that's going to land and resonate for them. And I would time block out the stuff that I needed to do on my calendar. And everything was very mechanical and structured and regimented. And as someone who also has this very creative, intuitive side to myself, it started to feel like I was just trying to fit myself into this box. So for me, particularly more recently, but in this chapter of entrepreneurship, for me, I've realized that actually when I let go of all of those layers of performance, of all the things that I need to do to try to be something for somebody else, and I show up in a way where I really just ask myself, like, what feels alive for me? What am I excited to share right now? What feels true in this moment? What am I being called to express? Which I think many creatives, like as creatives, is like we're tapped into that. We our society kind of beats it out of us, but it's something that most of us are naturally like. We know that feeling. It's like when you have just an inspired feeling that just wants to come through you. Maybe it's like a painting or a piece of art or a photo or a song or something that just happens, and it's not so much you trying to figure it out, more so that you're just becoming open and available for something deeper to come through you. There's a form of marketing that's much more led from that place, and what I've found has been incredible in the sense that as I've let go of all of these conventional ways of showing up in marketing and let my marketing be this soul aligned expression, people have responded completely differently. And my business has grown in this really beautiful way. And I connect with all of these incredible people like you who, see a piece of content that I create and there's a different frequency to it. There's an aliveness to it. There's a soul recognition in it. I talk about this idea of resonance, and really what I see resonance is when you're embodied and you're anchored in a truth, when you're expressing from that place within yourself, you become this beautiful lighthouse for other people. And it's like it cuts through the noise and people feel it in their soul. And there's something within us that recognizes truth in another person. It's like when you see it, there's a part of you, the deepest part of you, that goes, this feels real to me. This is showing me who I am. And marketing can become this beautiful beacon that allows us to connect back within that in ourselves. And when we do that, we create magnetism, we create attraction, we allow the right people to self-select and come closer to us. So it's a different paradigm for marketing, and it's really fun. In some ways it's a new journey for me. In some ways it's actually really just a remembering of the thing that I was always doing before, when I was 13 in my bedroom, creating songs from the heart before I got distracted and before all these layers of what I thought I needed to be. It's been this beautiful dismantling and coming back to the core of what marketing really is, which is this beautiful act of human connection. So we can definitely dive into that on a deeper level, but yeah, that's a bit about marketing from more of a resonance-based perspective.
Yeah, and I find that beautiful, and obviously it resonates with me, and as I'm sure you've experienced so many people. And you can tell, you shared some of your messages of people's reactions to your content, and you're definitely creating that soul connection that you speak about, and that's what it was for me as well. I was curious about the pivot point at which, what was it that made you go from, okay, I gotta tap back into the kid in me and start a new way of speaking to my potential clients, to the audience, and just getting this resonance message
Mhm.
out.
Yeah, I mean, about a year ago, I would say a little over a year ago, I made the decision to make a pretty major pivot in my business. And at that point in my life, I had built this business serving mostly new coaches and helping coaches grow and launch their businesses. And on paper, the business was very successful. It was very profitable. It was running very smoothly. And internally, I started really feeling this sense of misalignment. And for me, it was just like I didn't feel connected to it. I didn't feel connected to the clients. I felt like I was just kind of going through the motions. And it was like on paper, everything looked great, but it was just disconnected from my soul. And I started feeling this call to a deeper path for me. And I knew there was something more that was wanting to come through me. And this is what has since emerged as this deeper level of business and this real merging of spirituality and business, which I was kind of doing at that point, but it was kind of tucked away behind the surface. Like you wouldn't have known it from looking at the business. So I basically decided to dismantle that business and made the decision to dismantle that business. And what emerged from that was about a year of like a massive realignment. Shut down our group program. I really completely rebooted the entire business. And it was very difficult for me on a personal level. I mean, our revenue dropped by like 80% for close to a year. I also moved into this new home in Boulder, my partner Kimberly and I, that was like three times the rent we were paying in Denver. So it was like our personal expenses went way up, which was totally aligned. And I'm really glad I made that shift. And it was at a time when my business was really, in this transition. And it really, that chapter and coming out of that chapter now, I mean, it was a deep chapter of realignment, of real like personal evolution and growth, of stripping away all of these layers of external stuff that I had built that was at one point aligned with who I was, but was not no longer aligned with the next level that I was stepping into. And that period in that chapter, I think really along the way, I started looking at my marketing and asking myself, like, how am I showing up and where am I holding back or where am I performing? Or is there a way of doing this that could feel more authentic or more real for me? Or what would happen if I just let go of what I thought I needed to say to get clients or this performance, this thing that I was doing? And what would happen if I started showing up differently? And I started just sending emails out to my list and posting things that were just very authentic and very real. And I started getting these beautiful messages back from people. And at first it was just like a little trickle. And then it came in like it was like a flood. And like so many people just reaching out in tears and being like, "Oh my God, like I can't believe you're sharing this." And it was like when I let go of this layer of performance, I started showing up in a way that was so much more real and more honest. And I created a form of expression where other people could really feel me.
Hmm.
And that's the thing that actually makes people want to work with you or just feel drawn to you. It's like when you can feel someone, marketing, a lot of us are so focused on like being seen. It's
Hmm.
like, how do I get in front of the most people? Or how do I have the perfect message? It's like we focus on all the mechanics of the scaffolding, but actually, at the end of the day, the thing that really makes people want to work with you is that feeling that they get when they actually experience you. It's feeling like your humanity, your life force, your essence. The thing that actually creates the magnetism is not what you say, it's who you are, it's your being, it's your energy. And so when you're just showing up and being real with people, there's something incredibly magnetic and attractive and resonant that emerges. And all of this came for me out of that period of really letting go of the business of really stepping into like a pretty intense period of surrender and coming out the other side with something that just felt more simple and more true.
I think you hear similar stories time and time again. You know, when a person reaches a certain level of success, and on paper, anyone objectively could say, okay, they're successful, they're really doing it, they're killing it in their career, they're making good money. But with so many people, they still have that feeling of, I'm not really living out my full potential and purpose. And I think, especially in this day and age, like I decided, in the recent couple of years that I really want to merge creativity and spirituality and human connection. Like that's what I'm all about these days. And that's the type of content I want to create. And I really want to be a champion for human interaction, human connection, and authenticity. And I think that the reason that message is resonating so much these days is because we've gotten really removed from that. I think technology and AI is a topic that can't seem to shut up about. But I think what it's done is it's killed a lot of the humanity that bonds us. And, I mean, why
Mhm.
are we here? I think the main reason is for that human connection and creativity and interaction. And, we've gotten so used to just being these avatar versions of ourselves and bombarded with never-ending content. So when you operate from that place of authenticity and really speaking from the soul, I think these days, those are the people that are really going to stand out and connect with people. I think that's what drew me to you for sure. And for myself, I think my biggest challenge has always been feeling like I just want to connect to my audience. I know they're out there, but the challenge is how do I find them or how do they find me? And anytime I've tried to do anything that didn't feel authentic to me, and anytime I took advice of, here's a strategy that works, use this script. If someone ghosts you, just say this. It just never works out. But when you do connect with someone, you can usually tell from the first couple of minutes. I'll get emails saying, I looked at all these photographers in the area and then I found you and I just knew. I just knew because they picked up on the part of my work that is truly me. I really do put all of my heart and soul into what I do. I'm very passionate about it. I want it to be the best possible thing it can be. And to me, it's as much about the experience of collaborating with another human being as it is about the end result.
I love what you just said. I mean, there's so many goodies in there we can unpack. Some of the things I hear this a lot from entrepreneurs too. It's like how do I find my people? And sometimes there's this sense that it's like we have to go out there searching for them. The reframe is like your people are actually like they're looking for you.
Yeah,
The question is, do they know, like, can they feel you? Are you showing up in a way that allows them to really to have that moment like what you described when you saw a video of me or found something online, to have that moment where they go, oh, like this is my person. And so, so much of marketing as I see it today is really this act of how do we dismantle all of the layers that are holding you back from being fully expressed as who you already are? This is not about adding more on top. It's about letting go of all the things that you think you need to be so you can become the purest, clearest, truest expression of you. And you can create that moment where someone sees you and they go, you're my person because I feel you. That's really what it's about. So it's less about like how do I go out there and chase and try to, get all these people to come to me, and more so how do I become a lighthouse that is so radiant, so fully self-expressed in who I am, so fully owning my unique expression that when someone does find me, there's a deep moment of like soul recognition. And I think that is really what the process of marketing, particularly in this new approach of resonance, is about. It's not easy to do though, because we take it one level deeper. It's it requires a level of vulnerability that is deeply uncomfortable to the parts of ourselves that are afraid that if we, because most of us have this deep-seated belief of who I am is not enough, or who I am is not worthy, or I'm not, I'm not good enough as I am, or it's like all these deep wounding that most of us have as human beings. And so when you're talking about showing up as you, it's like sounds really nice on paper, but actually what it requires is like a deep level of healing of all the parts of ourselves that are afraid to be who we are. It's like the simplest thing to do is be who you are, but it's actually the hardest thing to do as well. So it's this paradox of like it sounds easy, but in reality it's actually quite difficult to do this work.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. And I think it comes easier to some people than others. I don't think it's for everyone. I think as creative people, I think we may have an easier time doing that because that's just anytime you create something and share it with the world, you are in your most vulnerable state. You're opening yourself up and, sometimes showing people the ugly parts of you. Art is not always pretty. A lot of times it's not. But I think some people do need more structure and more of a script, and I think that's okay. But if we can just encourage people to get in touch with their spirituality a little bit more. And I was going to ask you, do you feel like, I'm not sure what your spiritual journey has been throughout the years, but do you feel like the work that you do has kind of paralleled the growth that you've experienced in the spiritual realm? Because I feel like so much of what you're talking about comes from a very spiritual place.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the underpinning of it. It's to me, I see it as the more I can get out of the way, the less of me there is standing in the way, the more like transparent I become in this way that I just become this channel or this vessel for God to move through me, the more that I become magnetic, the more that marketing works, the more that my business grows. That external success and this internal spiritual path are really just one and the same. The business is a vehicle where I get to just release all of these layers of myself that are trying to prove something, these layers of ego that are really just they're clogging up the pipes. So for me, it's yeah, it's the emptier I am, which is really what my spiritual path has been about. It's how do I let go of all of these parts of me that are fear, that are just trying to control and grip and hold on to things and trying to be something. And the more that I can show up in this way where I can just be this open vessel for something that wants to come through me, the more it just all works. So it's deeply spiritual. And, when I used to, when I was in Los Angeles, I was a part of Toastmasters, this public speaking club. Those of you, if you're listening, you've never been, it's you go, you learn how to speak in front of people, you get up and you share. And I was part of this club for a couple of years and I really enjoyed it. It was a great community. And I used to go and I'd hang out. And if you've never been to Toastmasters, there are these different parts of the meeting. One of the parts of the meeting is you go up and you give a speech. Then there's another part where people go up and they evaluate the speakers. So you can either be a speaker or you can be an evaluator. I was always a little bit uncomfortable giving speeches, but I loved giving evaluations. I felt so comfortable up there. And I would always, at the end of the meeting, they would give these awards out for like the best evaluator and the best speaker. And oftentimes I'd win these little ribbons they would hand out for like the best evaluations. And for a while, I didn't really understand why I could feel so comfortable going up there giving an evaluation. But when it came to speaking, I just felt like there were these blocks. Like I'd feel stiffer and it wouldn't be as easy for me to go up there and share. And it clicked for me after a couple of months. I realized the reason why evaluations were so easy for me was because when I would go up there and I would give an evaluation, my mindset was, I have 3 minutes to help this person to share the best information that I can share to help this person become a better speaker. And because my mindset was so focused on this other person, I wasn't thinking, how am I coming across? How am I speaking? How are people perceiving me? I just got up there and I was like, hey, I just want to share these things that are going to help this person become a better speaker. And that was why it was so natural. And that was why, I won all these awards was because I wasn't trying to be a great speaker. There was no me in it. And I think about that often. I share that story quite a bit because I really feel like business and marketing and all of these things in life, it's like the less of me there is in the way, the more that I can show up in that open channel kind of mindset where it's like, I'm not here trying to be something for you. I'm just here expressing what wants to come through me. I think that's the big secret. And it's, again, it's one of those things that's not, it sounds great, it sounds simple, but it's actually very challenging to do. And I really see entrepreneurship as that. It's like, it's this beautiful mirror where we get to see all of the parts of ourselves that are still trying to be somebody. And can I let go of those things over time? Can I start to show up in this more expressed way where I'm really more of a channel? That's what makes marketing easier. That's what creates more resonance. That's what allows you to attract the types of clients who are truly meant to work with you. All of it comes really as a result of that.
It's such a fascinating concept to talk about, the concept of self. I think that's a very Buddhist way of looking at it, and I'm not sure where I land, but I think in the moment I feel like every person has an antenna, the way Rick Rubin would describe it, and we are channeling things. To me, I think it's a combination of you pick up on certain ideas, certain frequencies, and then it kind of works its way through you. And that's the combination that then comes out. It's channeling an idea and then processing it through the channel, the vehicle that is you, and putting your own stamp on it. Anyway, that's a much
Yeah,
deeper
it's
conversation, I think.
we definitely get in. Yeah, I mean, most things spiritually are paradoxes. It's like when you start really diving into spiritual truth, and what you're pointing to is this paradox of like it's the emptiness, but also that we it's like we are the most fully unique when we're out of the way.
Mm.
That's like how I experience it, is I am like most fully myself when I'm no longer trying to be anything or anyone. And I'm completely open, completely empty. That's when something that is like truly unique gets expressed through me in the way that only I can express it. So it's the paradox of like holding the infinite and the part of us that is like this deeply unique individual and kind of being in both worlds at once. I think that allows us to do like truly beautiful work in the world and work that really heals.
Were there certain books or people or podcasts or concepts that got you more and more into that way of thinking?
I think it's been a long journey. I mean, I think
Psychedelics?
we're all, yeah, psychedelics were a part of it. I mean, when I was in my early 20s, I was diagnosed with cancer, and I went through a couple years of treatment and relapse and bone marrow transplant. And that period of time really, for me, kicked off. It was the catalyst for my own spiritual awakening. Because I was in so much pain, just like emotionally, mentally, especially after that experience. Because for a while, like a couple of years, I mean, I didn't really know whether or not I was going to make it through. And I think the pain and the suffering of that really was the thing that propelled me to want to seek deeper answers and to understand my place in the world in a deeper way and to have a model for how I saw myself that would allow me to hold all of that without collapsing into it. So, yeah, I mean, I think going through that experience really, that was the beginning. And then that drove me to, psychedelics. And I studied A Course in Miracles for a while, which is a spiritual path. And I think there are all sorts of incredible, beautiful spiritual paths, and everyone has the one that's going to be aligned for them. I, when I was in Los Angeles, I used to go hang out at Shambhala and Insight LA and these, Buddhist kind of meditation centers. And all my friends were really into Buddhism and they were all seekers. And so I did that for a while. And it's taken different forms over the years. And I've read so many books and things. And at a certain point, I feel like it just all becomes like, oh, yeah, that's the thing that they're talking about behind the words. It's just all pointing to the same thing in different ways. So whether you experience it through the concept of God or the concept of no self and Buddhism, or it's all kind of the same thing. It's just they're different words. And I wouldn't be so presumptuous to suggest a series of books or a path for anyone, because I think the way I experience it more so is that I think that the thing that has always propelled me has been this deep yearning and this deep willingness and openness to be shown, to be led. And I think that willingness is like that openness or that desire is the thing that if someone can hold that, then the path will appear and they'll be guided towards the books and the resources and the teachers that are right for them on their journey. That's what it was for me. And I don't think there's one way or one path. There's infinite ways that speak to different people differently, you know?
Anytime you go through a health crisis, it really puts things in perspective because so many of us go through life unaffected for a stretch of time, and you really don't have your priorities straight until something like that happens. And when there's something off about your health or something awful happens, it really puts things in perspective. No one comes out unscathed in this life. I think everyone experiences something terrible that happens to them, but I also think whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger and perhaps more spiritual.
Yeah. I mean, I always tell people like I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but I'm super grateful. And it was one of the best things, probably the best thing that ever happened to me, honestly. Because when I think about who I am today and the level of depth and the strength of my heart and the ability that I have to meet people in a much deeper way, and just the incredible healing work that I get to do with the clients that I work with, and the way that I see business, and just thinking about all of the incredible people in my community that I get to serve and whose lives are impacted through the I mean the big part of that was that experience. I can't separate that from me. So I'm super grateful for it. Again, I wouldn't wish it on anyone. But it all serves as like everybody has their path. And I actually think the being asleep is also like a beautiful part of it. It's I think the forgetting and the remembering, it's when I really started waking up, I felt like I was just stepping into a whole new world. And it was like my whole paradigm for reality was turned upside down. And there was a period of like a year where I felt like I was just in like bliss because my whole life I felt like I was asleep, and somebody just suddenly turned the lights on, and I was like, holy crap, I had no idea that this was how life really was. I thought it was this way, and I was completely wrong, and that was this whole other reality. And I don't think that would have been so beautiful had I not been asleep for like all my life before that point. So the beautiful thing about the contrast is that it allows us to experience the richness of the alignment, of the joy of waking up. So it's almost like it couldn't be constructed better. Like if God was like, okay, well, what's the perfect way it's supposed to be? Well, we come into this life, we forget, and then we have this beautiful journey of remembering. And how sweet is that we get to come into greater alignment and with our truth, and we get to experience more and more joy and freedom and fulfillment. We just have this ever expanding reality of experience that's pretty cool. Like I don't think I could have designed it any better than that.
No, I think that's the design of life is you truly learn through experience and through growth and just by going through it. If you had all the answers from the
It'd be no
get-go,
fun.
it would be
Be
no
no
fun.
fun.
It would be no journey. In one of your videos, you talk about creating safety in your nervous system in order to be okay with receiving money. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one, man. The way I see money is it's a form of energy, and it's like air. So imagine for a second that money is like air in the sense that it's all around us all the time, and we have infinite amounts of it always available. Most people don't see money like that. Most people think money is this finite thing that they have to go out and get. That I don't have money, I go out there and chase it or do something to get it. Let's just set that paradigm aside for a second and imagine money is like air. You open your mouth, air comes in. You don't have to do anything to be worthy to receive it. It's just, it exists. It's here. It's just a part of the fabric of reality. So the question then becomes, okay, if money is all around me and I have access to an infinite amount of money, why am I not experiencing infinite abundance in my life? That's a really good question to ask yourself. And the way I experience it is the reason that I don't experience abundance is because I've cut myself off from it. And the reason I've cut myself off from it is because I have stories, beliefs, a nervous system that takes this infinite thing that's all around me and basically creates all these walls and layers that separate me from the experience of that infinite abundance. So the question then becomes, how do you let go of those things and experience what's already here? And the what I experience is as like my own journey. And when I first started my business, I wasn't making any money. I mean, I scaled the business to 500,000 a year in sales, signed over 2,000 clients. I've been doing this for a while. And what I've realized is like people think it's all about strategy, but actually strategy plays a very small role in it. It's like 99% of it is, can I become an open channel to receive more? And so if you imagine, if you just close your eyes for a second and just imagine like $1 million, let's say, flowing through you, maybe, a listener can do this right now. And maybe the number is 10 million or 100 million, whatever the number is, just imagine that flowing through you and notice how you feel in your body. And what many people will notice when they do that is they will notice there's some constriction. There's a tightness, there's a maybe a revulsion, a part of us that's like not fully ready to receive. It's almost like, the feeling when someone gives you a compliment. They're like, "Hey, you have really awesome hair, Philip." And you're like, some people could be like, "Yeah, like that feels really good, right?" But other people would be like, "No,
I'm
my
one of
hair's
those
not."
people. I'm like, thanks, that appreciate that.
Yeah, right. So there's a part of you that's maybe not fully able to receive that compliment, right? So the question is, we can get really curious about that and we can say, okay, well, like there's this energy wanting to flow through me, but there's a part of me that's like putting this wall up, right? Or like cutting me off from this experience of this beautiful, energy that someone's wanting to flow through me. Like, why is that? Why am I doing that? Same thing with money. Most of us have all sorts of stories and narratives and beliefs around money cut us off from the experience of that abundance. And sometimes the story is, I need to work hard for it. That was a lot of my story. Growing up, my dad made a lot of money, but he worked really, really hard. He used to wake up at 4 o'clock every day. He worked at a bank and he used to work every Sunday. He would wake up at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and he'd work. And I saw that as a kid and I had this story that I wasn't even aware of from observing him of like, okay, I can be successful, but I have to work really hard. In other words, money doesn't flow to me easily. I can't just receive money. I need to work for it.
Right.
So that's an example of a story that you might have that might create a reality in which you feel like you got to hustle. You got to work really hard. And you see all sorts of people out there playing out that story. They're working like 3 jobs, trying to make ends meet. And maybe they're successful or they've made a decent amount of money, but they're working really hard for it. Well, it's because you have this belief that, money equals hard work and I've got to work really hard. That's just one example of many, many stories that block the flow. So all this being said, I think the journey of expansion in business is like 90%. How do we just create more expansiveness in your body and your nervous system and your capacity to receive? Can you expand? And sometimes it starts in little ways. It's like when someone gives you a compliment, can you just take a moment? Like next time someone says, "Philip, you have awesome hair," you take a moment to really receive that. Like, wow, that's really awesome. Like, thank you. Thank you. Instead of being like, "Ah, no, my hair's not that great," or "Oh, thanks," but kind of like shrugging it off. Like, can I allow that energy to like flow through me to really like receive that? And the more my experience is, the more that I've been able to become an open channel for money to flow, the more that I've been able to let go of the resistance, those inner blocks. It's like the kinks in the garden hose of the flow of money that's wanting to flow through me. The more that money just effortlessly comes to me.
Yeah.
And that might be triggering for some people to hear that. You know, it's like, hold on a second. You're telling me that like I can receive money and it can be easy? Yes. Yeah. That's what I'm sharing with you. But if you've been operating under a paradigm that says that that's not so, and your entire life has confirmed that to you because you've been operating under an invisible set of scripts that say that you've got to work really hard for it, or money doesn't come easy, or, people who are rich are bad, or all these stories and beliefs that we tell ourselves that, create all these kinks in the chain. I think that can be very triggering for people to hear that. So even that is just showing you a piece of information. It's like, wow, I'm listening to Jason talk about this, and I'm noticing that there's a part of me that's like, screw you, Jason. That's useful information. That's showing me that I have a model of the world that I'm attached to. Can I just get curious about that?
I think that's a great way of thinking about it. And you're right, we're all programmed to view the world through our own personal lens. And so much of it is subconscious, so much of it is our upbringing. I come from Russia and I have parents who've always been very practical, and I wasn't encouraged to dream. I was encouraged to take the more safe and practical path. So, as I told you, ever since I was a kid, I just knew that I was a creative being and that's what I was meant to do. And I'm so glad and fortunate that I had that feeling all of this time. And instead of just trusting that feeling, you go through life and you talked about tapping into the kid. Like, what were you excited about as a kid? And that's usually a pretty good indication of what your passions are in life. But we kind of lose that over time, and life and reality kind of beats it out of us. But to me, as an adult, I'm realizing life is just all about how you look at it. It's how you perceive it. It's how you respond to things.
Yeah.
So I'm a lot more aligned with that way of thinking versus, this is the way it has to be, or this is you can be influenced by anyone out there. There's so many voices, so much advice, but I think it's about finding things in people that you're aligned with. And for me, it's definitely your way of thinking versus you have to wake up in the four in the morning and do a cold plunge and do 100 push-ups. And, I've never been aligned with those people for a reason. So I think it's a beautiful message. And I also say, well, if this way of doing life hasn't worked out thus far, why not try? Why not try of thinking about it in different terms, the kind of the way that you've been describing? I'm sure there are people out there who's going to say, that doesn't work for me, and that's fine. But what practical advice do you have for people? Because yeah, I've already shared your profile with so many of my friends, and some of them come back with, well, yeah, I still need to pay the bills. I still need to put food on the table. So what kind of practical advice do you have for people to just kind of start tapping into what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think that there's many things that you can do, but I think a simple thing is just to start to look at the stories that we're telling ourselves and to question them. And so, for example, the person who's saying, "Hey, I've got bills to pay," I get really curious about that. And I say, like, "Hey, tell me a little bit more about what you think it means to pay the bills and what you think you have to do to pay the bills." And someone will start sharing their model of the world and what beliefs they have about what it means to make money and how they make money and what's possible for them and what isn't. And we all have a reality and a model of the world that we walk around with, but 99% of us never stop to question that model. We just assume that that's the way it is. And what I've found is that a lot of the stories and beliefs and the things that I've told myself for most of my life are just stories. They're stories that were passed down collectively by my parents and by generations before me and by culture and society. But we live in a world where there are these collective unquestioned beliefs. And so if you want to get really practical about this, it's just being able to look at what is my model of the world? What assumptions am I making about what it means to be successful, or what I have to do to make money, or what it means to pursue my gift or my calling or passion, or what compromises or sacrifices that I believe that I have to make. And this is just as simple as starting to look at those things and ask yourself the question, is that true? What evidence do I have to support that? Is there any evidence to the contrary? Can I find an example of one person out there who is living a reality that disconfirms this belief that I have? And I think that's really where liberation starts, and that's where freedom starts, and that's where a new way of being starts. There's I don't even know what to call her. I would say she's a spiritual teacher. Her name is Byron Katie. And she has a process she calls the work. You can go online, Google this. It's completely free. She's got like a worksheet you can download. I often will share this with clients, because there's a great framework for how to start to question some of your unexamined beliefs. And that's a process that I think anyone can go through. And I think on the other side of that is a lot more freedom. At least what I've experienced in my own reality is so many of the things I thought I believed, just it's not that they weren't true. They were true for me until I started telling myself different stories. And then there's a whole new possibility for life. It's like, wow, I didn't even realize that there was this other way of doing things that I wasn't available to because I was just telling myself these stories. So I think that's something practical if folks want to go check out Byron Katie's work. Obviously, I've got, workshops and master classes for if you're an entrepreneur and you want to dive deeper on marketing and how to grow a business in a way that feels more aligned and you resonate with this conversation. There's lots of stuff on my website too, jasonmoss.com. But those are a couple places that people might start.
Yeah, that's great advice. How do you feel about the normalization of ghosting that we're all experiencing these days? I know that's something that I've struggled with. You feel like you have a great conversation with somebody, you go through the effort of actually having a Zoom or a phone call instead of just cold emailing each other back and forth. And then you don't hear from them again. A lot of the times it's after you provide them with a quote. What are your
Mm.
thoughts and feelings about that? And again, a lot of the advice that I hear is, well, you didn't do the right thing. You didn't verbalize things in a way to
Yeah.
close the deal, to make the sale. How do you feel about the ghosting phenomenon these days?
Well, I mean, it still happens to me. And, my humanness sometimes it has a hard time with it. It's like, oh man, I thought I had a good conversation so I have those thoughts too. I think there's a couple things that I've learned. The first thing is I always try to look at it from the perspective of what can I learn from this about how I navigated the conversation? Was there anything I missed? Sometimes I find like I go back to the conversation that I had and I can see where maybe I was a little overeager or I was misreading things or I didn't slow down and really check in with someone. Oftentimes if someone goes to you like and this is not meant to be like you did this wrong or but oftentimes what I find is like when we don't create enough safety in a sales conversation and we don't check in with someone, it's like, hey, how are you feeling about this? Like on a scale of 1 to 10, like how is this landing for you? Like if we don't ask those questions where we really have an opportunity to just check in with someone, then sometimes we can misread. It's like someone can show up as really excited, but there's some things under the surface, or maybe they just don't want to like tell you how they really feel. And so I think it's important in like a sales conversation to be able to ask those deeper questions and to calibrate with someone. That often prevents a lot of this stuff. I don't know what's going on in this person's life, and I'm someone who I really try like I do my absolute best to like just say no. But I also recognize that no is kind of vulnerable for a lot of people to say. And a lot of people are just uncomfortable telling you how they really feel. And so I kind of see it more like, oh, this person's just like maybe a little uncomfortable sharing the truth. And I have compassion for that because I know sometimes it can feel vulnerable. Uh, so I try to kind of see it through that lens of oh, this person's probably just a little uncomfortable telling me how they really feel. And that softens it a little bit. So I think there's a couple things there, looking at your own leadership, being able to check in with someone a little bit more. Sometimes just getting curious. like, hey, just wanted to like level with you. I'm curious, like, because we connected last week and that's been a little bit, and just want to see how you were feeling about things. Like not getting pushy, but just getting curious and just checking in with people. Sometimes that can create some space for people to surface objections or concerns or fears. So oftentimes people won't share those things when they don't feel safe in a conversation. Like when they feel like you're pushing them towards a yes, or there's a like an agenda, you're trying to close them. Oftentimes that's what breaks down like authentic communication is when someone feels that you're trying to drive them to a decision and they're not ready to make that decision yet, but they don't feel like there's safety for them to be able to voice some of those fears and concerns. So a lot of it comes down to how do you create safety in a dialogue with someone so that they can feel like they can open up without feeling like there's an agenda. Like, can you be truly neutral in a conversation? Just be like, hey, what's coming up for you? I'm curious. Like, and if this isn't aligned, totally cool. Um, just with, yeah, I'd love to be able to kind of explore things and yeah, and we can figure out what's truly aligned for you in terms of next steps. Like the ability to show up in a neutral way, I think is a big part of it. So that's my spiel on that. I think there's a couple pieces there that will hopefully be useful for people.
I think that's incredibly useful for me. I love the advice of looking at it from a neutral and curious perspective. I don't think I'm ever pushy when I'm talking to clients, potential clients. My approach is always like, hey, this is what I do. I try to ask questions and gather information to determine, the cost of the project, and then is this aligned? Are we a good partnership? But I think you're right. I think a lot of people are just uncomfortable in saying no, or giving you reasons why it doesn't feel right. And I think that
Yeah.
kind of a follow-up was just like, hey, just curious, what you're feeling or what your thoughts were after our conversation, kind of putting
Yeah,
it like that instead of why won't you call me back?
totally. Yeah, it's like, can we approach it from like a non-needy place and it just like a neutral curiosity, I think is a big key.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to close with a question that I like to ask at the end of every conversation is what is your definition of creativity?
I think creativity is what happens when I get out of the way.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jason. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you, man. It was great to connect. I'm glad you reached out. So thank you for that.